Hello and welcome to another episode of What the Folk, the show where we bring you folk tales and other such oddities. For the second week of Fairy Month, I'm going to be reading to you from my lovely copy of the Annotated Grimms, the story The Elves, or The Elves and the Shoemaker. Now, this is a fairly common type of story, the helpful elves story. I don't have much to say on this one. Really, it's sort of an interesting Christianization of an older pagan tale. I should also note, while the Grimms translated this as elves, it is more right to say brownies or helpful fairies in this instance, but I'm sticking with this copy. So enjoy! The Elves. Once there lived a shoemaker who, through no fault of his own, had become so poor all he had left was enough leather to make a single pair of shoes. That evening he cut that leather for the shoes and was planning to work on them in the morning. A man with a clear conscience, he lay down quietly in his bed, commended himself to God, and fell asleep. The next day he said his morning prayers and was about to sit down to his work when he saw that the shoes were finished and laid out on the workbench. He was so astonished that he had no idea what to say. When he took the shoes in his hands to get a closer look at them, he saw that the workmanship was perfect. There was not a false stitch on them. It was as if the shoes were intended as a masterpiece. Before long, a customer came in, and the man liked the shoes so much that he paid much more than the usual price, and the shoemaker was able to purchase the leather for 2 pairs of shoes. He cut the leather in the evening, and was planning to work on them in the next morning with renewed energy. But there was no need to do that. When he woke up, they were already finished. Once again, he found the customers for them, and they gave him so much money he could now buy the leather for 4 pairs of shoes. The next morning he discovered 4 pairs of shoes on his bench, completely finished, and so it continued. Whatever he cut in the evening was finished in the morning. Before long he had a decent income again, and had become a prosperous man. Now it happened one evening, not long before Christmas, that the man was cutting the leather for the shoes, and before retiring he said to his wife, "Suppose we stay up tonight and try to find out who is giving us a hand." The wife thought it was a good idea, and she lit a candle. Then they hid behind some clothes that were hanging in the corner of the room and kept a lookout. At midnight, 2 tiny naked men sat down at the workbench, took all the work that had been cut out, and began to punch and stitch and hammer so nimbly and skillfully with their little fingers that the shoemaker just stared in astonishment. They didn't stop until they were completely finished with everything, and the shoes were on the bench. Then they ran off in a flash. The next morning the shoemaker's wife said, "Those little fellows have made us rich. We have to find a way to show our gratitude. They must get cold running around with nothing at all to wear. How about if I sew some little shirts, coats, vests and breeches for them? And I could knit a pair of stockings for each of them, and you can make them a pair of shoes." The shoemaker said, "That sounds like a great idea to me." In the evening, when they had finished everything, they put the presents on the table where the shoemaker usually puts the cut leather. Then they hid in order to see how the little men reacted. At midnight they scampered in, and were about to start their work when they discovered cute little articles of clothing in place of cut leather. At first they were puzzled, but then they seemed elated. They slipped quickly into their beautiful clothes, and smoothed them down and sang a little song.
"Don't we look trim and spruce? Here's to pleasure we've worked to loose."
They skipped and danced and jumped over the chairs and benches, and finally they danced on the floor and were never seen again. The shoemaker continued to prosper for the remainder of his life, and succeeded wherever he tried his hand at anything. The end.